Overview. American Icon, Alan Mulally and the Fight to Save Ford Motor Company, 2012, by Bryce Hoffman, depicts how Alan Mulally led the Ford Motor Company through significant crises in the 2000s. Ford had been struggling for decades and was facing the turmoil of the Great Recession, and although Mulally was an outsider, his strong leadership prevented the company from going bankrupt. Henry Ford founded the Ford Motor Company in Detroit in 1903 and began selling its first car, the Model T, in 1908. While the company proved popular and resilient, it quickly became hindered by a toxic corporate culture fostered by Ford himself. A culture of political infighting, paranoia, and cronyism persisted through several generations of Ford leadership. In 1999, the board was looking to counteract the company's struggle to produce popular, high-quality cars. They chose William Clay Bill Ford Jr. to lead the company. The company's downward trends in sales volume and quality nearly led to a financial crisis, which Bill Ford averted by closing factories and cutting jobs. However, his progress was hampered by a cutthroat environment that prevented executives from working together. Bill Ford and the board members eventually put their energy into recruiting Mulally, who had saved airplane manufacturer Boeing during its own crisis from 2001 through 2006. Mulally had been passed over for the CEO position at Boeing, so he was receptive to Ford's offer. When Mulally officially joined the company in September 2006, he immediately charmed employees and the media. Executives worried that Mulally would replace them with his own friends, but instead Mulally waited for executives to leave on their own. Mulally spent his first month learning everything he could about the company, its competitors, and the automobile market. He formulated a plan that involved a renewed focus on quality, reducing the number of products that Ford made, and improving transparency between divisions. He instituted a weekly meeting where executives presented their results and figures to each other and were expected to be informed and honest about their presentations. This process, called the Business Plan Review, asked executives to collaborate to uncover and solve problems and was intended to overcome the toxic culture at Ford. The company needed funding to make the changes Mulally proposed. He and a few other employees went to Wall Street to ask for credit. The banks wanted the entire company as collateral and offered financing totaling $23.6 billion. They closed the deal late in 2006. Ford surprised the market at the start of 2007 with a cooperative project with Microsoft called Sync that connected passenger phones and media players to the car's entertainment system. The automotive press became increasingly interested in Mulally, particularly as Ford posted its largest loss for the past year. Meanwhile, Ford's chief economist started warning the executives that an economic crisis could be on the horizon. Mulally lobbied Congress for changes to its proposed vehicle fuel efficiency rules, and in the same year, Ford sold its British brand, Aston Martin. The Ford family, which still held a substantial ownership interest in the company, started to become nervous about Mulally's changes. They considered hiring separate advisors, but eventually decided to unite behind Bill Ford and Mulally. In May 2007, Mulally met with Ron Gettelfinger, president of the United Auto Workers, to discuss the basis for their upcoming contract negotiations. They came to an agreement that would allow Ford to close the gap between its labor expenses and those of its Asian competitors. In October, Ford recruited a star marketer from Toyota, Jim Farley, who introduced new marketing strategies that were dealer-focused and authentic. The new advertising push attracted the attention of activist investor Kirk Kerkorian, who started buying up Ford stock, accruing a 6.5% stake in the company. Bill Ford acted to prevent Kerkorian's control from growing, and when the recession hit, Kerkorian divested from Ford. Mulally was in constant communication with the Federal Reserve throughout the economic crisis that began in 2008. He and the leaders of GM and Chrysler struggled to keep their mutually dependent companies from collapsing due to lack of sales, which was caused in part by the recession. Ford's quality ratings had improved substantially, and it was making more fuel-efficient cars, but it was still losing money. GM and Chrysler were closer to bankruptcy. The three automakers worked together to support needed suppliers and lobbied Congress for financial assistance. Ford opted not to accept government funds and did not receive a requested line of credit. U.S. consumers criticized GM and Chrysler heavily for taking government money in a bailout, and as a result, Ford's reputation benefited. The design and engineering divisions at Ford continued to improve their efficiency, cutting time and costs while producing better vehicles. Despite this progress and a renegotiated contract with the UAW that included a pay cut for Mulally, Ford continued to report record losses. It raised money by selling a round of new shares and capitalized on its reputation advantage. Chrysler and GM both filed for bankruptcy in 2009. The economy started to recover, and so did demand for new cars. It became more difficult for Ford to compete with government-managed GM and Chrysler, but it did receive a $5.9 billion loan from the Department of Energy to develop energy-efficient vehicles. Ford sold its Volvo brand in October and achieved profitability in time for the end of 2009. As the company recovered, it expanded operations in China and paid back its debt. Mulally received accolades for his accomplishments, and Ford received the rewards of better debt ratings and quality awards.